In the land of Judah, long ago, there was a time when the people of Israel faced great hardship and sorrow. The mighty city of Jerusalem, a symbol of God's promise and presence among his people, had fallen into the hands of a powerful empire called Babylon. The Babylonians, led by their king Nebuchadnezzar, had attacked the city, plundering its treasures, destroying its temple, and taking many Israelites captive into exile. Among those taken were young men from the royal family of David, men who carried the hope of God's promises for his people. These young men were Daniel and his 3 friends, whom the Babylonians renamed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But even in exile, God's faithful ones refused to forget their covenant with him. They faced many challenges, yet they held on to hope, trusting that God was still sovereign over all nations. The story begins with Daniel and his friends serving in the royal court of Babylon. They were very wise and capable, chosen because of their intelligence and ability to serve the king. But the Babylonians demanded they abandon their Jewish identity, eat the food forbidden by their Torah, and live like Babylonians. Daniel and his friends refused to defile themselves, choosing instead to remain faithful to God's commandments. They prayed to the Lord and trusted that he would deliver them. Their faithfulness was tested, but God honored their commitment. Because they trusted in him, he gave them wisdom and favor, and eventually, the king recognized their special gifts. One day, the king of Babylon had a troubling dream. It was a dream that deeply disturbed him, but none of his wise men could interpret it. The king demanded that his wise men tell him the meaning, or they would face death. Daniel, who was among the wise men, prayed to God for understanding. God revealed to Daniel the meaning of the dream. It was about a great statue, composed of different materials. The head was gold, the chest and arms were silver, the belly and thighs were bronze, the legs were iron, and the feet were a mixture of iron and clay. Daniel explained that this statue represented a sequence of kingdoms that would rise and fall, beginning with Babylon, the golden head. These kingdoms would dominate the earth and become increasingly violent and oppressive. But Daniel also declared that a day would come when God's kingdom would be established, an everlasting kingdom that would fill the whole earth and humble all arrogant kingdoms. This interpretation brought hope to God's people, but it also revealed the pattern of human history, a succession of empires driven by pride and violence. Yet, amidst these kingdoms, God's sovereignty remains unshaken. The dream pointed to a future when God's divine reign would confront and humble the pride of human rulers, bringing peace and justice. As Daniel and his friends continued to serve in Babylon, they faced further tests of faith. King Nebuchadnezzar, proud of his empire and his own greatness, built a colossal idol, a statue of gold, set up in the plain of Dura. The king commanded everyone in his kingdom to worship this idol whenever they heard music playing. But Daniel's friends refused to bow down. They knew that worshipping the idol was a violation of God's commandments. They chose to remain faithful to the true God, even if it meant risking their lives. The king, furious at their disobedience, ordered them to be thrown into a fiery furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. The flames roared fiercely, and the men were bound and cast into the fire. But God miraculously delivered them from death. The fiery furnace became a symbol of God's power to save his faithful servants. When the king saw that the 3 men were unburned and unharmed, he was filled with awe and declared that their God was the true and living God. From that day onward, Nebuchadnezzar recognized the power of the God of Israel. However, pride continued to consume the king. One night, Nebuchadnezzar had another dream that troubled him. This time, he saw a great tree that reached to the heavens, providing shade and shelter for all creatures. A messenger from heaven declared that the tree was a symbol of Nebuchadnezzar himself. The king was to be humbled and driven away from human society, living like a beast in the fields until he acknowledged that the Most High God rules over all kingdoms of men. The king's pride led to his downfall. He became mad, and his mind was turned into that of a beast. He lived in the fields, eating grass like an ox, until he humbled himself before God. When he finally acknowledged God's sovereignty, his sanity was restored, and he was reinstated as king with a new understanding that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men. But pride was not only a problem for Nebuchadnezzar. His son, Belshazzar, also grew arrogant. One day, Belshazzar held a great feast, using the gold and silver vessels stolen from the temple in Jerusalem. They drank wine and praised their gods, mocking the God of Israel. Suddenly, a mysterious hand appeared and wrote words on the wall: Min, Tekel, Upharsin. The king was terrified and called for Daniel to interpret the writing. Daniel explained that the words meant that God had numbered the days of Belshazzar's reign, weighed him in the balances, and found him wanting. The king's arrogance had led to his downfall. That very night, the Medes and Persians invaded Babylon, and Belshazzar was slain. The empire of Babylon was fallen, and a new empire was rising, the Medo-Persian Empire. As Daniel continued to serve under the new rulers, he faced more visions of future kingdoms. One night, Daniel saw a vision of 4 great beasts arising from the sea, each more terrifying than the last. The first was like a lion with eagle's wings, symbolizing Persia. The second was like a bear, raised up on one side, representing the Medes and Persians. The third was like a leopard with 4 wings, symbolizing Greece and its swift conquests under Alexander the Great. The fourth was a terrifying, powerful beast with many horns, symbolizing a future and evil empire that would persecute God's people. In this vision, Daniel saw a figure called the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. This figure was given authority, glory, and an everlasting kingdom, an eternal rule granted by God himself. The Ancient of Days, God, appeared and took his throne, judging the beasts and destroying the oppressive power of the final empire. The Son of Man was exalted, and God's kingdom was established forever. These visions underscored a vital truth: human kingdoms are temporary and often violent, but God's reign is eternal and just. They reveal that even in times of suffering and persecution, God's ultimate victory is certain. His kingdom will conquer all evil and injustice. Later, Daniel received more visions, including one about a ram and a goat. The ram represented the Persian Empire, with 2 horns symbolizing the Medes and Persians. The goat represented Greece, led by a mighty horn, an image of Alexander the Great. Out of the goat came many horns, and one of these horns grew extremely powerful, symbolizing a wicked king who would persecute God's people, desecrate the temple, and exalt himself above God. This figure is often associated with the historical figure Antiochus Epiphanes, or a future ruler yet to come. Daniel was deeply troubled by these visions, especially because he longed to know when God's promises of redemption would be fulfilled. He sought understanding from God, and an angel explained that the rebellion and suffering would last for a set period, 70 weeks, until God's plan of salvation was accomplished. But the visions also pointed forward to a final confrontation, a day when the evil king would be defeated, and God's victory would be complete. Throughout these visions and stories, one message stands clear: human kingdoms and rulers often forget God's sovereignty, becoming proud and oppressive, like beasts. Yet, God's power is greater than all human empires. His justice will prevail, and his kingdom will come in fullness. The faithful are called to remain steadfast, trusting that God is in control and that his promises will be fulfilled. The story of Daniel and his friends is a story of faithfulness amid adversity. It is a story of hope that shines through the darkness of exile and oppression. It reminds us that even when kingdoms rise and fall, God's kingdom endures forever. It encourages believers to trust in God's sovereignty, to remain faithful, and to look forward to the day when Christ, the Son of Man, will return to establish his everlasting reign. So, as you reflect on these stories, remember that God's plan is unfolding through history. His justice will reign, and his love will triumph. Keep faith, stay faithful, and trust that God's kingdom is coming. May you be inspired to live boldly for him, knowing that he is the king over all the earth. If you found this story inspiring, please like, comment below, and share this message with others. Don't forget to subscribe for more Bible stories and teachings. Together, let us keep faith alive and look forward to the glorious day when God's kingdom will be fully realized on earth.